Today we're going to do a starting system test on a 4.4 common rail engine. We've disabled the engine where it will not start, it will just crank. First step on our starting system test is we're going to test cranking voltage at the battery and see what that voltage is. Basically we're doing a mini load test at it, right? And what we need to do is make sure that we're above 8 volts while cranking. So I'm going to go right to the post on the battery and we'll go ahead and crank it over. Okay, so I'm at 10.4, right? I'm golden. Now what I'm going to do is go right to the starter and I'm going to take all the connections into play, right? And make sure that what I get to the starter motor terminal and the starter motor ground, right, are within close proximity to what that is there. We're going to take all the connections. So we're going to go to starter motor. Next test is right here to the starter motor terminal. Right goes what to the motor itself. So I'm taking into account every connection, and I'm going to go to starter motor ground at the same time. And we're going to crank that over. Go ahead. So I was at 10.4 and I'm at 9.7. So I have some loss, right? So now we're going to go and find out where that loss is at, right? If it's all in one place, we got a problem. If it's stacked up all the way around there, probably not a big deal, right? So we'll go through and do our loss one step at a time. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the battery positive, right? So we're going to go from the battery and it goes through here. This one goes through a connection and then up to here. So we're going to test it from one end to the other. So now we're doing a voltage drop test. We were checking potential. Now we're doing a voltage drop test. So what I'm going to do is put it at right at the terminal itself and right here, and we're going to go ahead and crank it. So I'm at 0.27, 0.28, right? My limit on that is 0.3. I'm approaching my limit, but I'm not there. You can see in this test engine we have that there's a lot of connections in between there, but I'm still not over my limit, right? So I check that first. The next check I'm going to do is my negative battery cable. Now in this scenario, negative is actually shorter than the positive and less connections. A lot of times on a machine, you know, there'll be a frame, a disconnect switch, an engine, a lot of things in between it. But we'll check our negative now. So I'm going to go negative to negative. Go ahead. 0.14, I get up to 0.7 there, so I'm good, right? No question on my negative. So my positive is a little high, but nothing to worry about. My negative is definitely plenty low. If I had a disconnect switch, I would go straight to that disconnect switch next, right? I do not have a disconnect switch, so I'm going to go right on past that. The next thing I want to do is the start relay contacts. I see a lot of problems with this one, right? People get confused and they want to find the start relay. We can do that test all right here at the starter. So what we're going to do is go to the starter itself. The start relay essentially is just taking and putting power to the S terminal. That's all it's doing. So what we're going to do is test it right out here. So we're going to go positive right here, and then we'll go down here to the S terminal itself. We're doing a voltage drop test. So right now the S terminal is getting ground through the starter itself, but we'll go ahead and crank. So the start relay contacts itself is at 0.5, and that's actually slightly above my limit. So if I were to chase this white wire back and go actually to the start relay, it's slightly above my limit, right? That's the S terminal is what energizes the start relay, right? Or the start solenoid in this case. It's energized by the start relay. And then when that travels all the way over, it makes the contacts to go across the solenoid contacts, right? So a little bit high there, but that's not in my main circuit, and it's just on the edge. And then my next is the start solenoid contacts, and I'm done. So the start solenoid contacts are the last ones. They're right across the start solenoid itself, right? And that's the motor terminal and then the positive. Go ahead and crank it. Okay, so the start solenoid itself, the connections inside there, really good. So no question about that. So if I needed to look at what my problem is with this, if I was experiencing a slow crank, I would look at that positive side, right? Because it was up near the limit. So I could look at the connection here, you know, then here and up here. That would be close to my limit. Also, the other thing that I would look at is we need to go over to the start relay and take a look at that more in depth. Just doing a voltage drop test to figure out where I'm losing that, right? That 0.5 is right at the limit. Still, this one would pass, but if there was something I wanted to look into, those would be the things. But we've successfully tested the battery and the starter and all the connections going to it to make sure that they're good.